many conflicting theories regarding the importance of learning the basic fundamentals of art. Some feel that an artist should be relatively free from formal art training, rules, and outside influence. On the other hand, there are those who are very academic and technical in their approach. They feel that everything should be done according to a set of predetermined rules. Regardless of these basic different lines of thought, there is one basic step that is important to both: the learning of fundamentals that help one to express graphically his ideas and emotions. And that's the purpose of this motion picture, to give you the first step in learning to draw, basic art, the introduction to drawing. It is estimated that 15 million people in America draw and paint as a hobby, and are often referred to as Sunday painters. This figure does not include the millions of boys and girls who obviously also love to express themselves in drawing and painting. Art is an individual creative experience. The greater the knowledge one possesses, the greater will be the experience. It is hoped that this motion picture will help to start you toward great fun in the wonderfully exciting field of art. Our authority for this movie is a man known to a great many as one of the leading professional artists in the United States, Hal Cooper. Mr. Cooper is the author of the book, Art for Everyone. He is also the founder of the Cooper School of Art in Cleveland. As a top-flight professional artist, Mr. Cooper has devoted a great deal of his time toward the encouragement of the amateur artist. He has dedicated himself toward bringing the fun and satisfaction of drawing and painting within the grasp and understanding of the layman. In this capacity, Mr. Cooper has been national president of the Amateur Artists Association of America. He is also founder and national president of the Junior Artists Club of America, and, well, but his modesty requires us to stop here. The only additional thing we should say about Hal is that he believes anyone can learn to draw, and has proved it through his 24 years of teaching experience. Learning to draw is an exciting challenge and becomes easy only when we know how and gain experience, of course. Well, of course, it isn't that easy as it, Hal, for the beginner. No, not quite. In drawing, we are concerned with 5 basic qualities of an object. Line, which is the single dimension of length. Shape is concerned with 2 dimensions, length and width. Form is the 3rd thing we are concerned with. It gives our drawing the 3rd dimension, depth. For tone, our 4th consideration, we find the quality of lightness and darkness of the object. The 5th basic quality to be discovered is texture, the smoothness, roughness, or feel of an object. It is generally presupposed that most objects in nature can be seen in terms of 4 basic forms: the cone, the sphere, the cube, and the cylinder. Here are all of the 4 basic forms we just saw, but in a treatment that illustrates how they are applied to drawing. Take these 4 basic forms, the cube, sphere, cone, and the cylinder, and let's draw a picture. Here, all of the forms have been put together in line form. Although the rectangular box is not a true cube, it is a variation or portion of the basic form. Now we start adding foliage to the basic forms we have constructed in skeletal design. The barn is given more detail. The ground in the foreground is worked in, along with the bush in the lower right-hand corner. The horizon line is also added. Now final detail and tone are added to make our picture more convincing and interesting. To give a picture a 3rd dimension, a knowledge of perspective is extremely necessary and important. What is perspective? A picture drawn in perspective shows the object not as it actually is, but as it appears to be from the view of the observer. For example, we can see from this picture that these 2 pencils are parallel with each other. Now, as we take a position looking along these pencils from one end to the other, they appear to converge, yet we know they do not. This is what we mean when we say perspective shows things as they appear to be, not as they actually are. When creating a picture, we must first consider our viewpoint as we observe the scene. Let's assume that this is a cube. Since we are looking at it at eye level, that is with a horizon line passing through the center, it appears to be absolutely square, which of course it is. But suppose the cube is parallel to our line of vision and below our eye level. Now we can see not only the front, but the top as well, and the top appears to be getting smaller toward the back. The same thing holds true if we look at it from above our eye level. We see the bottom and front. Again, the bottom appears to get smaller toward the back. This is parallel, or one-point perspective. In parallel, or one-point perspective, the object or objects are parallel to our line of vision. Applying what we have just seen about perspective, let's draw a table. Observe that this is basically a box design. Our horizon line is above, therefore the top lines will appear to converge at a single vanishing point on the horizon line. Fill in all of the legs and top, then erase the imaginary vanishing lines and horizon line. Simple, isn't it? A railroad track represents an excellent example of parallel perspective. This entire picture is constructed in one point or parallel perspective. Using the same one-point perspective, here is a drawing of a kitchen. Again, all our lines in this picture converge at the vanishing point on the horizon line. Try this in your own kitchen. Here is still another illustration of parallel perspective, a bird's eye view. First of all, we must establish our horizon line quite high since we are above the scene. Then a vanishing point is needed. Next, a street, then the basic box designs of buildings, adding a bit of detail, and finally, completing the rendering. Now let's, Inky, what is it? Hal, Inky has something in his mind over there, I believe. Would you show us, Inky? That's the boy. Now, what was it that was troubling you, Inky? Why, of course, angular perspective. So far, we've just considered our view from a plane parallel with the object at which we're looking. But if we're standing at a point where we can see two sides of an object, at the corner of a building, for example, we can see that each side appears to vanish at a point either side of the center. If our horizon line is above the object, we will see the top in addition to the two sides. Conversely, if the object is above our horizon line, we will see the bottom and two sides. To draw a building in angular perspective, first establish a horizon line and draw a box, starting with the perpendicular line that is closest to you. Far out on the horizon line, establish a vanishing point on each side. From these points, draw the top and bottom lines of your box, making them meet at the first perpendicular line you drew. Now, add a second box on top of the first, thus forming another tier to the building. Then add another, a larger box that will add height to the building. And now that the basic skeleton of our building is constructed, proceed to draw in the windows, the doors, and so on. You can get as detailed as you desire. Circles and other shapes can be drawn in perspective too. For example, watch what happens when we turn this circular piece. Notice that it appears to be an ellipse. This type of view would be one-point perspective, with an imaginary line drawn from the outside edges to a vanishing point. While an ellipse appears easy to draw, it is quite common for the average student to have difficulty constructing it. Avoid the usual pitfall of bringing the ellipse to points at the ends of the long diameter. Here is a good illustration of a series of circles in relationship to the line of vision. Here are several common objects drawn in circular perspective. Even here, note that they are basically constructed within boxes of different form. The boxes will aid you in determining the course of lines that are vanishing when they are not straight. A single picture may incorporate any number of vanishing points, which are all located on the same horizon line. These vanishing points are determined by their relationship to our view. This picture uses three, one to the left, one to the right, and one in the center. Everything in the room is parallel to our line of vision, with the exception of the chair and footstool. The chair and footstool, then, will have to be drawn in angular perspective, while the rest of the room can be drawn in parallel or one-point perspective, vanishing in the center of the picture. As you progress in your use of perspective drawing, you will find that a greater freedom and more realism is yours when you draw in perspective without the use of a ruler. Freehand perspective releases your picture from the mechanical feeling that must be present when it is created mechanically. These pictures were all drawn without the use of a ruler, yet were done with the feeling of depth that perspective brings. Let's go back to our four basic shapes once again and consider another thing that helps to bring life to our drawing: cast shadows. A cast shadow is one which is thrown upon any other surface by an object that is in the line of light. To establish a shadow for this cone, first it is necessary to draw a central vertical line. Now draw a 45-degree line from the top of the cone to the ground plane. 45 degrees is about the average angle for natural light. Next, from this point, draw lines to the vertical line of the cone at the center and edges, thus forming the cast shadow. To add a shadow to a sphere, as we have in this scene, first draw a vertical line through the center. Now, draw a horizontal line at the base, establishing the ground plane. As we did with the cone, draw a 45-degree line at both outer edges and through the vertical center line. Notice that our shadow is like an ellipse. When the cast shadow from an object falls over the surface of another, it follows the contours of that object. The shadow will be longer or shorter depending upon the height of the light source. Notice here that one shadow is cast from the vertical plank onto the horizontal plank, which in turn casts its shadow onto the side of the cube. The ground shadow is cast by the cube and horizontal plank, giving it an irregular shape. Here's an interesting drawing illustrating an old-style rail fence around a cornfield. If you're sketching or painting an autumn scene, you'll find that this fence creates an interesting pattern of shadows cast by natural light. Notice that all of the shadows in this drawing are cast in the same direction. To create a more convincing interpretation of a subject in the terms of form, tone values, textures, and color, the artist must employ the technique of shading. Light and shade refers to the variance of tone values ranging between black and white. We have broadly 7 values in our tone value scale. The sphere serves as an excellent example of showing form through the medium of light and shade. That portion of the object which is struck by the light source and reflects it back at its greatest degree is termed the highlight. From the highlight, gradually becoming darker, we observe a range of values which we call halftones. The darkest of these values is called shadow. And along the outside edge, away from the light source, is an area which is somewhat lighter due to reflected light. This is caused by light rays reflecting from a second source, such as the surface on which the sphere is setting. Lastly is our cast shadow. Here again are the 4 basic forms. This time, they are produced in light and shade. You'll notice that as the light strikes the objects, we have the highlight. Receding around their contours to our right, we find the halftone, shadow, and reflected light. To their base are the strongest of values, the cast shadows. Now let's see how light and shade are applied to a drawing. Here we have blocked in the basic form with the use of lines, following the perspective rules we learned earlier. In this picture, we have added tone to the sky and the ground. Now we have added tone to the front of the house, and a darker tone to the side, indicating that this is the shadow side. This picture indicates that we have added a still darker tone to the chimney, and the house is beginning to show realism. Here we have added the cast shadows and the darkest tone values. In this picture, we have completed the house by adding the detailed texture. There is still another dimension in drawing that can give your pictures the professional touch, that of reflection. An important thing to remember in drawing reflections is that they are equal to the length of their object. A reflection always begins at the base of the object. Therefore, if the object is away from the water, only that part of the reflection which is cast on the water is visible. If the object is in the water, the reflection is visible right from the base. Remember, a reflection is always the reverse of the object itself. The top of the candle does not show in this illustration, but in the reflection, it does show. On a curved, shiny surface, reflection is usually distorted and elongated, which is illustrated by the can and ball. We've shown you in this movie the basic fundamentals necessary to produce on paper the pictures you see in your mind's eye. Everyone, of course, cannot be a professional artist. But, as Hal Cooper says, everyone can learn to draw. Practice the fundamentals we have shown you. Enjoy the wonderful feeling of accomplishment which comes with the illustration of thoughts.